Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking on what might be the biggest mission yet, plunging into the nature of the self.
It's a huge topic. We've pulled together sources from all over the place. Ancient Stoics, modern psychology, even some pretty wild neuroscience.
All asking the same question, really. What is this try, and why does it feel so hard to change it?
Our goal is to give you a kind of shortcut, to see that the self isn't this solid single thing. It's more like a set of constantly running programs.
And a moral, some emotional.
And as we'll get into, some are just, cognitive fictions, little stories your brain tells itself to keep things running efficiently.
And we're going to start this whole investigation with the ultimate reality check, a practice that's been around for thousands of years. Memento Mori.
Remember death.
Yeah.
It sounds really stark, I know. But the sources are so clear that this isn't about being morbid, it's about being practical.
Right, the philosophers saw it as a tool, didn't they? A tool for creating priority. Like right now.
Exactly. You see it formalized in history, too. Think about the Roman triumph. The victorious general comes home. He's treated like a god for a day, the highest possible honor, but there's an aide walking right behind him.
And what's he doing?
He's leaning in, whispering in his ear over and over, "Remember, thou art mortal."
Wow. At the absolute peak of glory.
It's a mechanism to just short-circuit the ego. Brings you right back down to earth. And the philosophy behind it goes way back to Socrates.
Who said something like, the whole point of philosophy is just practicing for death.
About nothing else but dying and being dead. Not literally, of course, but about preparing the mind for it.
And if you really take that on board, your whole day just shifts. Seneca said it perfectly. Let us postpone nothing.
Let us balance life's books each day.
The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. That's powerful.
It has to be, because the ego's greatest defense is this comfortable idea of infinite time. We always think, I'll fix that tomorrow.
I'll be a better person next week.
Memento Mori just shatters that. It forces you to confront that your time is a finite resource.
And if you don't, you just waste it on, what do the Stoics call it? The trivial and vain.
Petty arguments, pointless desires. Death doesn't make life meaningless. It makes it urgent, purposeful.
People have always used this idea to kind of inspire a zest for life, right? Like that art genre, the Vanitas paintings.
Yes, from the 17th century. They were basically visual reminders of how fleeting everything is.
I've seen those. They always have the same things, like a skull.
A skull for death, right. And then a tulip for life, which is fragile. And an hourglass.
For time, just slipping away. It's like an instruction manual for living.
It is. The whole Stoic directive is just distilled into these really actionable little reminders. Marcus Aurelius was constantly writing to himself.
You could leave life right now.
Let that determine what you do and say and think.
I actually think Epictetus was even more direct about it. He told his students to keep death in mind every single day.
Why specifically?
To avoid excessive desire or base thought. I mean, if you really believe your time is limited, why would you waste a second on petty grievances?
You wouldn't. The self that understands its mortality it's free.
Okay, so we've established the self as this individual facing its own deadline, using philosophy to find purpose. But we're rarely alone.
Right, so now we have to move from the self in isolation to the self in relationship. And this is where philosophy meets the need for real honesty.
And for this part of our dive, we're turning to the work of Bell Hooks. She talks about love as an act of will and an act of truth.
Yeah, she starts by talking about this feeling that the world has become loveless. She says her writing was a call for a return to love.
But she has a very specific definition of love. It's not the one we see in movies.
Not at all. She uses M. Scott Peck's definition, which is that love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth.
Okay, let's break that down. The will to extend oneself. That's the key part.
It is. It means love isn't passive. It's not a feeling that just happens to you. It's an act of choice. An action.
So if the will or the action stops, then the love is gone. Even if the feeling is still kind of there.
That's the friction. It requires constant effort. And Hooks asks, why is that so hard for us now? And her answer points straight at the false self.
This mask we create.
Exactly. She argues that society sort of trains us for this. Women are encouraged to pretend and manipulate, to lie as a way to please.
To put someone else's comfort above their own truth.
While men, on the other hand, are taught to build a false self that's invulnerable, that's armored, as a way to remain powerful.
So both sides are presenting a mask.
Yeah.
And you can't really perform that act of will extending your true self if you're wearing a mask.
You can't. It's impossible. It just creates this deep sense of alienation.
So to get to real love, Hook says we have to commit to telling the truth.
To ourselves and others. And that's terrifying, because that false self was built to hide all our fears and insecurities.
We have to agree that hearing the truth, even when it's painful, is valuable. But what about the parts of ourselves that are so uncomfortable we can't even admit them to ourselves? The things that made us build the mask in the first place.
And that is the perfect segue. Now we have to go deeper into the psychological architecture. We have to confront the hidden part, the Jungian shadow.
Okay, so the shadow, people hear that and they just think the evil side.
Yeah, the dark side. And it is that. The definition is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior and guilt-laden personality. It definitely has our morally bad tendencies.
And this is the part people miss, right?
This is the critical part. The shadow also contains genuinely good qualities. Things like normal instincts, appropriate reactions, creative impulses.
Well, if the shadow is created by repressing things, why would you repress something good? Why would I actively discard a strength?
Because it's not always about good versus evil. Often it's about maintaining your conscious identity, your persona.
Can you give an example?
Sure, let's say you have a great natural capacity for assertiveness, but you grew up in a family where any kind of self-advocacy was called selfish.
So you learn to be quiet.
Yeah.
To be agreeable.
Exactly. You repress that assertive impulse. And you go through life getting pushed around, never speaking up, and internally, you were just seething with resentment.
So both the strength, the assertiveness, and the negative feeling, the resentment, get pushed down into the shadow.
And it leaves you in the state of impoverishment. You're literally starving yourself of your own energy.
And because it's hidden, you can't just access it. How do you even find it?
Almost always through projection.
Okay.
Projection is when you take something you're struggling with inside and you see it very clearly in someone else.
So when I get outrageously angry at my coworker for being, I don't know, entitled.
It might be because you're wrestling with your own feelings of entitlement, or maybe your own repressed desire to ask for what you want. Your psyche is trying to keep the conflict out there in that person so you don't have to own it.
It sounds psychologically exhausting.
It is. And the way to heal, to get that energy back, is to assimilate the shadow, to accept those parts of yourself.
So stop blaming the coworker and accept that this struggle with entitlement or whatever it is yours.
And when you do that, the energy locked up in the repression is released. It can bring a depressed person back to life. The whole goal is to move from blame to radical self-acceptance.
So we have the self we must perfect through facing mortality, the self we must open through truth, and the self we must integrate by accepting our hidden parts. But all of this assumes there is a single I doing all this work.
And this is where we take the final turn into the most radical idea of this whole deep dive. The idea that this unified self might be a beautiful and very effective illusion.
We're moving into cognitive architecture. And the starting point is research on psychedelics, which often produce this state called ego dissolution.
The diminished sense of an I that's separate from the world.
And the scientific conclusion from studying the brain in this state is pretty mind-blowing. Neuroscientists call the self model a useful Cartesian fiction.
Okay, let's slow down on that term. Cartesian fiction. What's that mean?
It's a nod to the philosopher René Descartes. His big conclusion was cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He argued the I was the one thing you could be absolutely sure of.
And neuroscience is saying, not so fast.
Exactly. By calling it a fiction, they're saying this certainty you feel is actually a high-level hypothesis generated by your brain. The I isn't the thing, it's a model.
So the feeling of being a single, continuous person is like an operating system, a really efficient way to organize all the data flooding in.
That's a great way to put it. It's a center of representational gravity. It's like a whirlpool that makes information sticky or self-relevant. Every sound, every memory gets filtered through the question, does this affect me?
And that's crucial for survival.
Absolutely. So what's happening in the brain to maintain this fiction?
Well, there are two main networks running the self-show. The first one is called the default mode network, the DMN.
Right, that's the one that's active when you're just daydreaming.
It's more than that. It's specifically linked to your narrative self, your inner historian. It's what holds your life story, your plans, your personality. And during ego dissolution, activity in the DMN just plummets. The story of me starts to fall apart.
Okay, so the DMN is the narrative self. What's the other network?
That's the salience network, or SLN. This one is tied to the embodied self.
My body.
Your body. It monitors what's important or salient right now. It governs emotion, body boundaries, where you are in space. It's what tells you where your arm ends and the air begins.
So if the salience network gets disrupted, you can literally lose the feeling of where your own body is.
Yes. The disintegration of that network is strongly linked to the embodied self dissolving. The full experience of ego dissolution seems to happen when these self-binding processes get degraded.
It's a phenomenal unbinding. The brain literally takes the glue out of the data, and the unity we feel just fractures.
Perfect way to put it. People report that their attention is no longer guided by these purely selfish goals. Consciousness is less filtered by me. You're still aware, but the solid I fades, and you see that our normal sense of unity is just a constant modeling process.
Which leads to the scientific consensus that you can explain conscious experience without ever needing a soul or a true indivisible self.
The unity we feel is a prediction, a powerful one, a useful one for survival, but ultimately not an accurate description of reality. The illusion is just that good.
So we're left with four really different but connected versions of the I. The self is mortal, which is a tool for action. The self is choosing, which requires brutal honesty and love.
The self is hidden, that Jungian shadow we have to integrate. And finally, the self as a cognitive fiction, just a high-level model the brain uses to operate.
It leaves us with a really provocative question then. If the neuroscientists are right, and your normal experience of being a single solid person is just a cognitive model, an illusion,
then how much of your life is determined by defending that fiction, rather than experiencing the reality underneath it? What happens if you intentionally and carefully start to challenge that powerful, pervasive illusion?
that challenge to dig past the illusion to find what's really there is the whole game. We'll leave you with that ancient advice from Marcus Aurelius. Dig deep within yourself, for there is a fountain of goodness ever ready to flow if you will keep digging.
Keep digging, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.